Over 60% of engine problems start because of overheating, not because of high mileage. And many drivers end up paying more than $4,000 in repairs before they even understand what caused the issue. The damage usually builds up slowly and quietly, long before the warning light turns on. Today, I'm going to share 11 simple and proven habits that can help your cooling system last over 300,000 miles without needing replacement. And if you ignore even one of these habits, you could end up with a repair bill you Habit number 1, never ignore rising temperature. Most drivers wait for the temperature gauge to warn them. But by the time the needle moves, engine damage may already be happening. Here's what people often do wrong. They assume everything is fine as long as the gauge stays in the normal range. But gauges react slowly because they measure the average coolant temperature, not the hottest spots inside the engine. I often see engines arrive at shops already damaged because drivers kept driving after temperatures started rising. Overheating begins inside before the gauge shows a problem. Drivers usually don't notice and keep going, thinking they can make it home, while the heat silently stresses engine components. By the time warning lights come on, damage may already be done. Driving while the temperature climbs is one of the fastest ways to turn a small cooling issue into a major engine repair. The smarter habit is to take any unusual temperature rise seriously. Pull over early, investigate, and give the engine time to cool. Often, all that's needed is a coolant top-up or a small leak repair. The difference is clear: stopping early may cost only a few $100s. Ignoring the signs can lead to overheating damage costing $3,000 to $7,000, sometimes more than the car is worth. Engines don't fail suddenly. They wear down over time from neglected cooling habits. Keep coolant, airflow, pressure, and circulation in check, and your engine will last much longer. Which habit have you been skipping without realizing it? Share in the comments for more mechanic-proven tips that save money and help your car last longer. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out our next video on proven habits to make your car suspension last over 500,000 miles without replacement. Habit number 2, check your coolant levels often. Your temperature gauge can look normal while your engine is already overheating inside. When coolant levels drop, air pockets form in the engine. These pockets stop the coolant from touching hot metal surfaces, creating hotspots that damage parts long before the dashboard warns you. Sometimes the temperature sensor is still in coolant, so the gauge seems fine even though parts of the engine are actually getting too hot. Vehicle inspections show that low coolant is one of the most common maintenance issues, usually caused by slow leaks or evaporation that drivers don't notice. Many people just top off the coolant occasionally without finding the real cause and rarely check levels consistently. The easy way to prevent problems is to check coolant levels every month, top off properly, and investigate any repeated loss. This costs nothing and can prevent major engine damage. If low coolant is ignored, overheating can warp cylinder heads or blow gaskets, with repair bills ranging from $2,500 to $6,000. Overheating rarely happens all at once, it builds slowly and quietly. Even full coolant won't save the engine if you skip the next habit. Habit number 3, only use distilled water. Using regular tap water in your cooling system might seem harmless, but over time it can quietly damage your radiator from the inside. Many drivers make this mistake. When coolant levels drop, they top it off with tap water because it's convenient, not realizing that tap water contains minerals. These minerals can settle in the cooling passages over time, forming deposits that clog radiator channels and reduce heat transfer. I often see radiators partially blocked after years of mineral buildup, especially in areas with hard water. Because this happens slowly, drivers rarely notice early. The engine still runs normally, but cooling efficiency drops gradually. Overheating can appear later under heavy load or in hot weather, and most drivers never realize it's connected to the water they used years earlier. The simple fix is to always use distilled water whenever you mix or top off coolant. It costs just a few dollars and prevents mineral deposits completely. Ignore this, and you may eventually need a new radiator, which can cost $600 to $1,500. Continued overheating can lead to even more expensive repairs. And remember, even the right coolant mix won't help if you skip the next habit, checking your coolant levels regularly. Habit number 4, don't let old hoses leave you stranded. Cooling hoses usually give no warning before they fail. They just burst, and suddenly your engine is in serious trouble. A common mistake is thinking hoses are fine if no coolant is leaking. But hoses are exposed to constant heat and pressure, and the rubber slowly breaks down from the inside. I often see hoses fail after 6 to 8 years of use, especially in warmer regions. The damage usually hides itself. Hoses often fail without visible cracks. When a hose suddenly ruptures, coolant spills out and engine temperatures can spike in minutes. Drivers usually don't notice until they see steam or the warning lights come on. Many overheating breakdowns start this way, something that could have been prevented with a simple inspection. Check your hoses during routine maintenance, and replace them every few years or as soon as they feel soft or swollen. This keeps your cooling system reliable and prevents sudden coolant loss. The cost difference is huge. Replacing hoses usually costs $150 to $350. Ignoring aging hoses can lead to overheating and engine damage, with repair bills easily reaching $3,000 to $6,000 or more. A small preventive replacement today can save thousands later. And remember, even new hoses won't help if poor water quality is quietly clogging your cooling system. Habit number 5. Fix coolant leaks early. The most dangerous coolant leaks are the small ones drivers barely notice. They often start tiny and stay hidden for months. Here's what many drivers do wrong. They see the coolant level drop a little, top it off, and keep driving without looking for the cause. But even a small leak lets coolant escape while air enters the system. Many cars on the road run low on coolant at some point, usually because of slow leaks that get ignored. At first, everything seems fine. The temperature looks normal. But inside the engine, air pockets start to form. This creates uneven heating that slowly damages gaskets and internal parts. Most drivers don't notice anything until the engine suddenly overheats, especially during heavy traffic or when driving under load. A small coolant leak might not seem serious, but it's one of those problems that can quietly ruin an engine if you ignore it. If you catch it early, the repair is usually simple, maybe replacing a hose, clamp, or seal. That often costs between $100 and $300. But if the leak continues, coolant loss can lead to overheating, blown head gaskets, or even major engine damage. Repair bills can easily go over $3,000. That's why it's important to check your coolant level regularly and investigate even a small drop. A leak never fixes itself. It only gets worse and more expensive over time. And leaks aren't the only risk. Old, worn hoses can suddenly burst without warning. Habit number 6. Give your engine the right coolant. Many people believe that all coolants are the same, so mixing different types won't cause any harm. But that small mistake can slowly shorten your engine's life. Most drivers don't realize it until cooling problems show up years later. Modern engines are made with different metals and gasket materials. That's why manufacturers design specific coolants with special additives. These additives help prevent rust, control buildup, and protect cooling system parts. When different coolants are mixed, the additives can react with each other. This can create sludge or acidic compounds that slowly damage the radiator, heater core, cooling passages, and even the water pump. At first, everything may seem fine. Coolant still flows, and temperatures look normal. But over time, deposits build up. Coolant flow becomes restricted, heat doesn't transfer properly, and hotspots start forming inside the engine. Eventually, overheating begins long after the original mistake, making it hard to connect the problem to the mixed coolant. If you need to add coolant but aren't sure which type to use, it's safer to add distilled water temporarily. Then refill the system with the correct coolant as soon as possible. Mixing random coolant just to top off the reservoir can cause problems that show up months or even years later. The rule is simple: always use the coolant recommended by the manufacturer, and avoid mixing types. It doesn't cost more than using the wrong one, and it keeps the system clean while protecting expensive parts. If you ignore this habit, clogged radiators, heater core failures, and overheating repairs can easily cost between $1,000 and $5,000. A simple fluid choice can turn into a very expensive mistake. And remember, even the correct coolant won't protect your engine for long if it's slowly leaking out without you. Habit number 7. Keep the cooling heart strong. Your engine can overheat even if it hasn't lost any coolant. That's why many drivers don't see the problem coming. If the coolant level looks normal and there are no leaks, most people think everything is fine. The water pump is the heart of the cooling system. It constantly moves coolant through the engine and into the radiator to release heat, then sends it back to repeat the cycle. Without this steady flow, heat stays trapped inside the engine. When the water pump starts to fail, coolant moves too slowly. It stays in the engine longer than it should, and temperatures slowly begin to rise. Most pump failures start when the bearings wear out or the impeller inside the pump wears down and can't move coolant properly. From the outside, everything may look normal, but inside, heat builds up, especially during highway driving or when the engine is under heavy load. The danger is hard to spot. The coolant is still there, and the temperature gauge often reacts too late. Meanwhile, hot spots form inside the engine. Metal expands unevenly, and engine parts slowly weaken. Cooling system failures are still one of the most common causes of roadside breakdowns, and poor coolant circulation is often the reason. To protect your water pump, always use the correct type of coolant. Replace the coolant on schedule, and fix any leaks quickly. Low coolant or dirty coolant can shorten the life of the pump. It's also smart to replace the water pump during timing belt service to save on labor costs later. Preventive replacement usually costs between $400 and $900. If you ignore it, the engine can suffer serious damage, like warped cylinder heads or a blown head gasket. Repairs can easily cost $3,000 to Habit number 8. Let your radiator breathe. Your cooling system might be working perfectly, but your engine can still overheat. Why? Because heat can't escape if airflow to the radiator is blocked. When you're driving at highway speeds, your radiator depends on steady airflow to remove heat from the coolant. Over time, bugs, dust, leaves, dirt, and even plastic bags can collect on the front of the condenser and radiator. Since the AC condenser sits in front of the radiator, debris usually builds up there first, blocking airflow before it even reaches the radiator. I've seen vehicles overheat during hot weather simply because the radiator was packed with debris. SUVs and pickup trucks that drive on highways or dusty roads often have this problem, even when the rest of the cooling system is in great shape. The tricky part is that drivers usually don't notice it. Coolant levels look fine, parts seem normal, but engine temperatures slowly rise, especially in traffic or during summer heat. If you ignore it, repeated overheating can damage hoses, radiators, and even the head gasket. Repairs can start around $800 for a radiator replacement and climb into the thousands if the engine gets damaged. The habit is simple: check and gently clean the radiator and condenser fins once or twice a year, especially after heavy bug season or dusty driving. A simple cleaning can restore airflow and help prevent expensive overheating problems. If you're finding these tips helpful, take a moment to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next habits that could save you from costly repairs. Next, we'll talk about the part that keeps coolant moving, and when it fails, overheating can happen without warning. Habit number 9. Trust the temperature gatekeeper. The thermostat may be small, but it plays a big role in keeping your engine safe. Like any hard-working part, it doesn't last forever. Its job is simple but very important. When the engine is cold, the thermostat stays closed so the engine can warm up quickly. Once it reaches the right temperature, it opens and lets coolant flow through the radiator. This keeps the engine in the safe range of about 180 to 220 degrees Fahrenheit. Over time, after years of heating and cooling, the thermostat can wear out and get stuck closed. When that happens, coolant can't flow to the radiator. The heat gets trapped inside the engine, temperatures rise fast, and the coolant can start to boil. If you keep driving, the engine can suffer serious damage. Parts can warp, and the head gasket can fail. What started as a small problem can quickly turn into repairs costing $3,000 to $7,000. I've seen this happen on vehicles like the Honda CR-V. A thermostat got stuck closed in traffic, and the engine suddenly overheated. The driver thought everything was fine until the temperature gauge shot up. By the time they pulled over, the coolant was already boiling. The smart habit is to replace the thermostat every 4 to 5 years. The cost is usually between $150 and $400, depending on the vehicle. It's also important to use a quality OEM thermostat. Cheap aftermarket parts can fail early or open at the wrong temperature, causing more overheating problems. Habit number 10. Keep the lifeblood clean. Coolant isn't just colored liquid in your radiator. It's the lifeblood of your engine. And like anything that works hard over time, it slowly wears out. Many drivers only think about coolant when the level drops or the engine overheats. But most of the time, the problem isn't low coolant, it's old coolant. Coolant contains special additives that help control heat, prevent rust, and lubricate cooling system parts. Over time, these additives break down from constant heating and cooling. Once they're used up, the coolant can't protect the engine properly anymore. A simple way to tell if it's time for a flush is by looking at the coolant. If it looks dirty or has changed color, it's probably overdue. A sweet smell, rising engine temperature, or a gurgling sound when you start the car can also mean the coolant isn't flowing the way it should. I've seen cooling systems where the old coolant looked like rusty water. By that point, rust had already started forming inside the radiator, heater core, and engine passages. Water pumps begin to leak, radiators get clogged, and overheating happens more often, all because the coolant was never replaced. The scary part is that the engine may still seem fine while the damage slowly builds up. Then one hot day, the temperature suddenly spikes and expensive repairs follow. The simple habit here is to flush or replace your coolant at the interval recommended for your vehicle. This is usually every 30,000 to 60,000 miles, or every 3 to 5 years, depending on the type of coolant. A coolant service costs much less than replacing a radiator or water pump. Ignore it, and corrosion will spread through the system. Repairs can easily cost thousands. And even clean coolant won't help if airflow through your radiator is blocked by the next mistake. Habit number 11, respect the small hero. Let's talk about one of the smallest and most ignored parts under the hood, the radiator cap. It's small, cheap, and easy to forget about. Most drivers think it's just a simple lid. You put it on once and never think about it again. But this tiny part actually controls the pressure in your cooling system. It helps the coolant handle higher temperatures without boiling. I've seen many overheating problems caused by nothing more than a weak radiator cap, especially in older cars. When the cap starts to fail, it can trick people into replacing bigger parts like the thermostat, fans, or even the radiator, because the symptoms look like major cooling problems. Here's why it's hard to notice. A bad radiator cap doesn't cause instant overheating. Instead, the system slowly loses pressure. The coolant starts boiling sooner than it should, creating steam inside the engine. The problem usually shows up in traffic or hot weather, even though the real issue has been building up for months. When I check an overheating vehicle, I often inspect the radiator cap first. If it's loose or can't hold pressure, the solution is simple: replace it. Most radiator caps cost between $10 and $40, making it one of the cheapest preventive fixes you can do. It's a good idea to replace the cap every 60,000 to 100,000 miles, or about every 4 to 5 years, to avoid cooling problems. If you ignore it, overheating can lead to bigger damage. Hoses can weaken, sensors can fail, and the head gasket can get damaged. Repairs can quickly rise to $2,000 to $5,000. And remember, even if the system has the right pressure, it won't help if the coolant itself can't control heat anymore.